Welcome, everybody. I want to welcome everyone who's here in the room and also everyone who's on Zoom. We have people watching us that way, and this will also be recorded and placed on YouTube. So those who couldn't be with us tonight, one way or the other, can still have a chance to view it. So be sure to let your friends know that. We've had a lot of questions. This is the third of the educational presentations that the League has put on. And we've had a lot of questions, both individually and as the League, about the ballot issues, because there's lots of them, and some of them are kind of complicated. And we just felt like it would be good to present a program where our goal is going to be just to introduce you to the details of the 6 ballot issues and outline the arguments for and against each one. We'll be doing that, taking turns, and I want to introduce the folks that will be participating in this. First of all, I want to introduce and acknowledge Sharon Schneeberger and Carol Schreiber, who put together the slide set and did all the background research for us. So we appreciate that very much. And I'll introduce the panel. Marilyn McLeod is one of the board members of the local league, and she and I are going to try to field your questions as we go through the evening. And then the presenters will be Peggy Plaisher, Susie Adams, Zainab Jassim, and Joni O'Connor. So we will each one of us is going to present information about one of the issues, and then we'll allow a 6-minute period for questions and answers. And we ask that you restrict your questions to clarifying questions of the information that we're presenting, because none of us are deep dive experts on these things. We have studied them. We want to give you factual information, but if you have some really deep and detailed questions, you might want to save those until tomorrow, when at noon there will be a lunch and learn session here in this same room with Rudy Keller, who's a reporter with the Missouri Independent online newspaper. And he has done a lot more research and will be answering questions as well as speaking about the issues. So I hope we'll all know more at the end of the program than we do now. And with that, I'll get started on the first one on the ballot, which is the one I'm going to be presenting, and that is Amendment 2. And Amendment 2 legalizes sports gambling or betting or wagering. All those words are used pretty much interchangeably. Missouri already, oddly enough, legalized fantasy sports contests, but sports betting really was made possible in the United States in 2018, when the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision that authorized it. And since then, a lot of states have implemented it, including a number of our neighboring states. In Missouri, there have been attempts of the legislature to pass this into law. They've all been stymied by joining this issue with the issue of video lottery terminals. And that has led to the fact that the legislation has not been passed. So in order to kind of cut off that discussion, they went to an initiative petition for sports betting only. The ballot language is do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to allow the Missouri Gaming Commission to regulate licensed sports wagering? And then it includes a lot of different venues or places, ways that this could be done, including online betting, and the other things that you see listed there. It would restrict sports betting to individuals physically located in Missouri and over the age of 21. And I find that a little puzzling, because if it's online, I don't know how they'll know where the person is, but that's not addressed. It would allow the commission to impose or prescribe license fees and a 10% wagering tax on the revenues received. And that tax money would be appropriated for education after certain expenses are subtracted from that. That's expenses incurred by the commission And then also some funding that would be required to go to the Compulsive Gambling Prevention Fund. And it would also, the amendment would allow for the General Assembly to pass laws that they deem necessary in order to implement this. So that's the crux, those 4 points of the ballot language. A summary real quickly is that it's a citizen initiated constitutional amendment, seeks to legalize sports betting. Turns out it's not only sports betting, it refers to professional sports and collegiate sports, but then it also says other competitive events and awards involving human participants and lists some of those, including esports. I had to kind of chuckle and think, would this be betting on debate tournaments or what? But it is broader than just sports, as we understand that term. And the term sports wagering would include bets or wagers made on games, seasons, individual athletes' performance, any segment of a game, etc. So it's pretty broad. The fiscal note, and just as preface, you'll hear about fiscal notes for each of these. A fiscal note is an estimate provided by state and local governments of how much this measure would either cost or earn for the state. In this case, you can see the estimates there on the slide. There are one-time costs, ongoing annual costs of $5.2 million, initial license fee revenue of $11.75 million. So they would sell licenses to do this. They would get money for that. But then there would be the costs of administering the thing that would be ongoing. It was very difficult for even the state to estimate how much tax revenue it would bring in, because the proposal allows for deductions. So it isn't a simple, the company brought in X amount of money from wagering and therefore they pay X amount of taxes. It's more like filling out your income tax return and taking a bunch of deductions. So the range is pretty wide, $0 to $28.9 million annually. In revenue. So that's pretty broad. Local governments did not estimate, they were not able to estimate what revenue they would receive from this, if any. So the pros and cons, the proponents say that this initiative, if passed, would allow Missourians to place sports bets in a responsible, regulated manner, and it would provide some funding for classrooms and probably some economic development. There is sports betting that goes on all the time. It's just not regulated or taxed, so this would capture some of that. They also point out that Missouri loses revenue when residents go out of state to bet. And apparently they feel like they're losing a lot of revenue to Kansas and Illinois. Opponents say, first of all, that this is an expansion of legalized gambling, and that in general, gambling, compulsive and problem gambling, results in social costs. It results in people spending money on gambling rather than maybe other things. And it also results in people who need mental health services for compulsive gambling. There are some other opponents say that they really think this should be tied up with the video lottery terminals. They shouldn't be separated out, and this is therefore inadequate, won't bring in enough revenue. And then the other point, all other 3 bullet points all have to do with the tax rate, the 10% tax rate that would be codified in the Constitution. So if the legislature ever wanted to change that in the future, they would have to go back and do another constitutional amendment to raise it or lower it. But also opponents point out that they compare Missouri to Kansas and point out that Kansas has received very little revenue from their legalization of sports gambling, that the Kansas rate is 10%, just like ours. And in 2 years, Kansans bet $4 billion, but they only collected $18 million in tax revenue. So that's a pretty small proportion. And then the third objection just states that it's a very, well, what I just said. The state budget for elementary and secondary education is $10 billion. And so the estimate of 0 to 28 million is a small portion of that. So that ends. Oh, I didn't see you waving. I'm sorry, Carol. Okay, all right, questions? Anyone have questions? Linda?
Do we know what?
Oh, are we doing questions?
No, not
We need them on
cards.
a card so the Zoom people can hear them. Sorry. Does anyone have a card ready? The question is, will the tax funds raised from Amendment 2 go to public schools or all schools, including religious and private schools? That's an interesting question. And to my knowledge, it is not specified. We really don't know. It would depend upon how the legislature wrote the laws implementing the new tax. So, and that to be written. Yeah. So that is an important point to make. Yeah.
It just says appropriated for education.
Turn your microphone.
Toward you.
The ballot language just says for education.
Doesn't say public.
Right.
Correct.
Other questions? Linda's writing one. Do we know how much funding will be required for the compulsive gambling prevention fund annually? I do not know what the proportion required for that is. Do you? Does either of you, from your background research, know what percentage would go to that?
I didn't hear the question.
To the how much funding will be required for the compulsive gambling prevention fund annually? I can tell you what it's used for. I can't tell you exactly how much would be taken out, but there is a program run by the Missouri Department of Mental Health that includes a hotline and counseling services. They take the money from this fund already exists and is paid into by the casinos. And they take that money and then contract with private firms that do the counseling.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
So can you clarify, how does determined how much money, if any, actually goes to public schools? And the answer is no. I mean, frankly, that is the answer. What this does is authorize wagering and says the legislature can pass the laws to implement it. And that's the point at which this question would be answered.
And the fiscal note says estimate unknown tax revenue ranging from $0 to 28.9 million annually. So that's in the fiscal note, literally.
Okay. So did we have anything on chat or in the Zoom?
Yes, but
We got to move on. Okay.
I'll answer them.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next one, which is Amendment 3, and Peggy Fleischer will present that.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, I'm going to do Amendment 3, the Reproductive Health Care Initiative. And I put my background information in chronological order to help people follow along. 1973, we had the Roe versus Wade decision. Then in 1992, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the constitutional right to abortion in Planned Parenthood v. Casey. But that decision also gave states more leeway to restrict abortion if those restrictions did not pose an undue burden to the person seeking an abortion before a fetus is viable. Then in 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe in the Dobbs case, and that set the stage for the current law in Missouri. The Missouri General Assembly in 2019 passed what's called a trigger law. And Dobbs triggered this law, that is, caused it to go into effect. There are two major provisions of that law, And one is that abortion is banned except in medical emergencies. And the other one is there are penalties for healthcare providers who violate the ban, including criminal charges or a loss of license, that kind of thing. The ballot language for Amendment 3 is very long. I'm going to just summarize it. It establishes a right to make decisions about reproductive health care without government interference. It removes the abortion ban in the current law. It allows regulation of reproductive health care to improve or maintain the health of the patient. It requires the government not to discriminate against persons providing or obtaining reproductive health care. And in all these cases, reproductive health care can include more than abortion. It can include contraception, IVF, there are more things than I could possibly list. And then finally, allow abortion to be restricted or even banned after fetal viability, except to protect the life or health of the woman. The proponents say that Prop A will end the abortion ban so people can make decisions that are right for them. That the decision to have an abortion is a personal choice for individuals, families, and their providers. And that Missourians should have the power to make these decisions and choices without interference from politicians. But opponents of Amendment 3, say that the abortion ban should remain in effect, that human life begins at conception, that a pregnant woman's rights do not outweigh the fetus's rights, and that the time to decide whether to have a child is before conception. And now we're going to open it up to questions. No clarification. It was pretty clear. Okay.
Susie? There is nothing in the chat.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Susie, tell us about Amendment 5.
I hope I am as clear. Amendment 5. Now, can you hear me? Okay, Amendment 5 is on the Osage River gambling. One of Missouri's gems is the Lake of the Ozarks, where people from around the state and really around our country come to enjoy themselves. Missouri has several casinos and gambling proposals and amendments dating back to the 1980s and currently has 13 licensed riverboat casinos. The Missouri Constitution currently authorizes casinos only along the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers. However, Amendment 5 proposes an additional one casino along the Osage River between Bagnell Dam and its confluence with the Missouri River. Developers, which include the Valley Corporation, have proposed a new hotel, a convention center, restaurants, and other attractions, including a new casino along the Osage River. In 2021, the Osage Nation, an American Indian tribe that the river was named for, applied to the U.S. Department of Interior for a casino license. However, their application is still pending at this point. Ballot language for Amendment 5, as you can see here, says, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution? And I'm going to simplify some of this. To allow the Missouri Gaming Commission to issue one additional gaming boat license to operate on a portion of the Missouri River. It requires the prescribed location for the casino along the river. And it requires all state revenues derived from this new gambling boat license to be appropriated to early childhood literacy programs in public institutions that have elementary classes. On a financial note of Amendment 5, state government entities estimate an initial revenue of $271,000 and other fee revenues of $2.1 million annually. The annual gaming tax revenue is estimated to be $14.3 million. Local governments have not estimated revenues generated from this additional casino as of yet. Proponents of Amendment 5 say that a casino would bring tax revenues and an improved economy to the lake region. They've also pointed out that casinos do not bring crime to the region. Those opposed to Amendment 5 say casinos may promote compulsive gambling and do bring crime to the region. Residents of the region would see an increase in traffic, and it would make the area less family friendly. Opponents also say that the gambling tax rate and the fees are too low. The passage of this amendment could negatively affect the Osage Nation's ability to pursue their 2021 proposed casino project. And it is not clear if the revenue generated from the proposed casino would be funding in addition to or in place of educational funding for early childhood literacy. We're open for questions. They have to write them down.
Could you write your question on the
Can
card?
I just say my question and you say it
I
back?
don't have a card.
Nobody has cards.
I can carry a microphone over there. You carry a microphone? We'll come to you. There you go.
So what claim does the Osage Nation have? Do they have any claim to the land that they're talking about using this, building this casino on? I mean, I don't know of any reservation or, I mean, just because you named it, that's, anyway, do they have any claim to the land?
The answer to that, as I understand it, first of all, the Osage Indian application is not in this for a place that's the same as where the Ballot Casino would be. They're two different sites. And in fact, the Osage Nation's application is not on the Osage River. So this amendment addresses making it legal on the Osage River, but state law would not control the Osage Nation application because it's through the federal government. So
But they are in competition.
they would be, obviously, they probably don't think they can support two casinos at the lake, but they're two different processes for approval. And this really would only apply to the Valley application. Okay, this question says, language says from issuance of licenses to early childhood education. How much does the license cost and what mandates any other money to early childhood education? Does not mention profits. Okay.
Is it license fees only?
It's the license fees. Yeah, that's what this proposes. Yeah,
Deceptive.
yeah. From the, all state revenues derived from the issuance of the gambling boat license. Yeah. And so it's not a portion of the profits that the company would make. It's the license fee. And what mandates any other funding to early childhood education? I am not familiar with the whole funding mixture for early childhood education, so I don't know what all the sources are. But as Susie pointed out very well, this money would go to early childhood education. That does not necessarily mean that the total devoted to that in the state budget would go up. It's possible they could allocate this funding to early childhood education and then take away some other funding and end up the same.
Did this,
Are they trying to say that profits will go to?
No, the profits. This is not a tax on the profits. Yeah. Are there other questions?
yes, did this amendment end up on the ballot by virtue of petition or by virtue of action by the General Assembly?
It was a petition. Yes, it was a petition.
So are the Osage Indians also seeking to reclaim ancestral lands?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, that's kind of outside my purview, but not for this purpose. They purchased land for
I'm
this.
not sure.
Yeah.
The Zoom
I
question,
thought that was part of my there. I think we don't know.
Yeah, I just don't know. And obviously the Osage Nation, the people lived in Missouri previously. So in Missouri, Arkansas, and several other states in the area. So,
there's one Zoom question.
oh, okay, thank you.
Where's the Amendment 5 casino being proposed? Highways 50/63 like of the Ozarks, but it says confluence of.
It says the casino would be located along the Osage River between Bagnell Dam and its confluence with the Missouri. I am not familiar enough with Lake of the Ozarks geography to tell you exactly what highway that would be on. I'm sorry. Does anybody here have that knowledge?
Well, the river essentially tracks 50.
Oh,
But if
okay.
I bet they're gonna build this thing as close to the dam as they could get earth. Well, I mean, water, does that be a moat?
Yeah, there does have to be a moat. That is a good point. Okay, any other questions? Do you have anything to add, Mayor? No. Okay. All right, let's move along to Zainab. She's going to talk to us about Amendment 6.
All right. So Amendment 6 is regarding levying of fees to support salaries and benefits of law enforcement personnel. And a little bit of background on this amendment. So for almost 40 years, Missouri had imposed a $3 surcharge on every circuit court criminal case to finance Missouri's sheriff's retirement system. But about 3 years ago, the Supreme Court had ruled that collecting fees in court cases to fund that retirement, that sheriff's retirement, is unconstitutional because those fees were not reasonably related to the expense of administration of justice. But earlier this year, the Missouri legislature passed SJR 71, referring a ballot question to amend the Constitution to the voters so the Missouri Supreme Court will not be able to overturn the amendment. So the ballot language states, shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to provide that the administration of justice shall include the levying of costs and fees to support salaries and benefits for certain current and former law enforcement personnel. So really this amendment is addressing that Supreme Court ruling where they cited that the fees were not going to reasonably related to the expense of law enforcement, since it's a retirement fund, the personnel are no longer in service. For the summary of Amendment 6, it does seek to amend the Constitution to enable fees to be levied in the administration of justice to support salaries and benefits of law enforcement personnel. Law enforcement would include sheriffs, former sheriffs, and prosecuting attorneys. The Missouri legislature would set court fees and determine the details of implementing the amendment. As far as proponents of this amendment, they say that the assessment of fees is necessary revenue to finance the retirement benefits, and that this constitutional fix is necessary to fix the funding for the retirement system. Otherwise, it would run out within 10 years. And that without this fix, it would may diminish the quality of candidates for sheriff and prosecutor without a stable retirement fund. Opponents of the amendment state that fees and fines are borne by the users of the court system and are inefficient ways to generate revenue. That collection efforts detract from law enforcement efforts, that contributions should be funded from general revenues rather than revenues, since they are more stable. That fees and fines are regressive taxes, and that fees will be determined by the Missouri State Legislature, and that criminal defendants may be the poorest people in our state, and that we are asking them to bear this cost. Any questions?
Yeah.
Is it true that there's no limit on the amount of court costs the legislature could levy on poor criminal defendants to fund the salaries and pensions of prosecutors and judges?
Yeah, that is.
leading question.
It is up to the legislature. Yes, it does not specify any specific amount.
And why don't we use court costs to fund all the court staff, the judges, the assistant prosecutors, the assistant clerks, the deputy sheriffs? Why only the prosecutors and sheriffs get their salaries funded by criminal defendants? There's no logical reason.
Ask the state legislators.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. One thing that we need to highlight here is that it is a very limited number of people who would be covered by this retirement plan.
Right,
if
yeah.
it were indeed used for.
I think the estimates we've seen is about 200 people would be covered by this. Or at least that's how, or the current retirement. So the background that I gave earlier on, that Missouri had imposed a $3 surcharge that ended in 2021. That had went to the sheriff's retirement fund. And so really they're seeking, on the face of it, from the background of it, it sounds like they're seeking to really reinstate that. But the ballot language is very general. And, depending on how the legislature wants to implement it, they could go in a different direction.
Any other questions?
Yes, and then it is an amendment to the
Yeah, it would
Constitution.
be.
You might have answered part of this, but basically we're talking just about the sheriffs of our counties. It doesn't talk about the officers of our counties or the city of people. So we're only talking about this only benefiting a very small group, as you indicated.
Right.
And where did it?
Well, sheriffs and prosecuting attorneys. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So it is
still as a
small-
very small group.
Yes,
Yes.
that's the point we were trying to make.
Okay, I'm a little confused by the language of the amendment, which, as you say, is like so broad that almost anything could happen from it. It says it includes the levying of costs and fees to support salaries and benefits, not just benefits, for certain current and former law enforcement personnel, which sounds like they could make it anything they want. They could make it any price they want. I don't understand. Why don't, I was a teacher for 31 years, and here in Missouri, we have a great retirement system. I don't understand. Why don't they just, pay? I had to pay for my own retirement partly, and then the school district had to kick in for the other half. Why isn't each county paying for half that retirement and be responsible for that? Because counties that require more sheriffs should pay a little more. And then why isn't, and if it's just limited to sheriffs, it doesn't say prosecuting attorneys. This is the most bizarre amendment I've ever seen in my life.
You have a vote, you have a vote.
If I can try to answer part of what I perceive to be the question anyway. One of the deputies, the assistant prosecuting attorneys, the people who are not elected officials are already in a different retirement system. Sheriffs and prosecuting attorneys are elected officials, and so they had a separate retirement system with this funding mechanism in place. And when that funding mechanism was declared unconstitutional, now they're seeking another funding mechanism for it. That's right. Well, yeah, and there are a wide variety of potential funding mechanisms, but this is the one that's proposed. We're not here to debate, so is there another question?
This is, as we say, this is why you have a vote.
Yeah.
And it was struck down. I mean, the system was struck down by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
The legislature came back and said, we want to instead make this forever in the Constitution, and that's why they proposed this. So just keep that in mind, you know, whether you think that's a good idea or not. That's why we have the vote.
Good point. All right, we're ready to move to our next one. Joni O'Connor will talk to us about Amendment 7.
Amendment 7 will prohibit ranked vote choice voting and other alternative election systems, and it will require citizenship to vote. The background of this amendment includes a voting method, defines how we fill in our ballots and how the votes are counted. Alternative voting methods exist and have been used in other states and jurisdictions. Some of the voting systems include plurality, multi-winner, and ranked choice. The issue in this amendment is ranked choice and alternative election methods. The ballot language of this amendment: shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to make the Constitution consistent with state law by only allowing citizens of the United States to vote, prohibit the ranking of candidates by limiting voters to a single vote per candidate or issue, and require the plurality winner of a political party primary to be the single candidate at the general election. The information on citizenship voting: the Missouri Constitution currently states all citizens of the United States when referring to who can vote. The measure would amend the Missouri Constitution to add language to provide that only citizens of the United States. However, the Missouri Constitution already specifies U.S. citizenship is necessary qualification to vote. Proponents say in some parts of the U.S., documented non-citizens can vote in school board and other local elections. Missouri proponents would like to prevent the spread of this process. Opponents say the citizenship provision will not change who can vote in Missouri and is a distraction from the main issue of voting systems. The citizenship issue is regarded as ballot candy, which pairs a popular idea with a more controversial one in a ballot measure just to win over voters. Information on Amendment 7 on ranking of candidates by limiting voters to a single vote per candidate or issue, proponents claim protects the one person, one vote standard instead of asking voters to rank all candidates. It also prevents groups from promoting ranked choice voting as a change to our current voting system. And ranked choice voting confuses voters. Opponents say the proposal denies voters in cities, counties from choosing their local voting practices. Studies about ranked voting methods show increased voter participation, less partisanship, and fewer extremists elected. Are there any questions? Yes, there are.
We're open for questions on this one.
This was proposed by the legislature.
Good point.
As far as I know, in Columbia, we've never done ranked voting. Where is it occurring in Missouri? I was just kind of curious.
In St. Louis, they
In
have
St.
approval
Louis?
voting.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
one that's exempted from this proposal.
Okay, so
Because
it's
it's
not
already in
occurring
place.
anywhere else in Missouri except St. Louis, and St. Louis is exempted?
Yes, because
Yes.
it's grandfathered in.
Okay, once again,
You could never do it.
Yeah.
yeah, like it's come up recently.
Yeah.
The other question, the other question I had is, couldn't the, I guess I'm kind of, well, first of all, what is ranked voting? I mean, do they actually number them 1 through 10 or something? Is that what, I don't know what St. Louis does with that.
Well, do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
St. Louis actually has a system called approval voting, where if there, for example, there are 4 people on the ballot for mayor of St. Louis, you vote for everyone for which you approve. So if you thought all 4 of them would be fine, you'd vote for all 4 of them. If you thought only one of them could do a good job, you would vote only for that one. And then the vote total is determined based on how many total approvals they got. Then that result, the top 2 from that result then have a runoff election. So, but there are many variations of this, and we don't know and can't get into all the details, but ranked choice voting is just as you suggested, where you'd vote for your favorite candidate, and then your next favorite candidate, and then your next favorite candidate.
How is that different than?
So I might have this, I'm not probably qualified to really, but my understanding is we rank them. The bottom, the one that gets the least votes falls out. And there is a process by which the top vote getter is then the one that's elected. I mean, it's confusing to voters because I probably have confused you, but maybe somebody can do a better job.
Wait, the amendment though is just to say that we can never even consider another alternative. We can never vote any other than the way we are voting now.
Yeah, just to add to what you're saying, the value of it is that if your top candidate falls out, then your next top candidate counts. That vote counts. So you could have.
When they fall out, you mean they would die?
Well, no, no, they don't fall out literally.
Yeah, I think I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about ranked choice voting to Google it. But Sharon said the thing that's most
Yeah,
important,
if,
and that
for
is this
example,
would
you,
prevent us from ever doing that in the state of Missouri.
Yeah, let me just finish one sentence. If you had in a previous election voted for Ralph Nader, and then Ralph Nader gets the least votes, and your second vote was Gore, your Gore vote would still count.
They would have to go back and redo the whole thing.
Right. And I would point out that all of this, the places that have adopted this, it is for the purpose of achieving a candidate that has received more than half of the votes, so that we don't have a situation where a candidate there are 8 people running for office and the one who wins got 20% of the vote. So,
which can happen,
yeah,
which did happen in
has happened.
primary. The other thing about this proposal is the ballot candy, changing the wording to say only citizens can vote, and it currently says all citizens can vote. And so that is used as, is seen as being a way to encourage people to vote for this particular amendment as it sounds good because we're worried about other people who are non-citizens voting, but that doesn't happen. Only citizens are, only American citizens are permitted to vote. And in Missouri, you have to be a Missourian, you have to be at least 18. There's rules. And so it's an unnecessary part of this, which you need to take into account as well.
Right. I think we're down to our last one. And we're going to go back to Peggy for that. She's going to talk to us about Proposition A.
Wow. Yeah, already toward the last one. Proposition A, minimum wage and earned paid sick time, I have to point out is not an amendment. This would not go into the Constitution. This would be a state statute. So that is the difference in why we've separated it out here. The background on Prop A. First, I'll look at minimum wage, since that was the first thing in the title. The current Missouri minimum wage is $12.30, and I believe that was established earlier by another initiative petition. And so I suppose the rationale is now it needs to be revisited. But in terms of the paid sick leave, currently there are no Missouri or federal mandates about paid sick leave. And this would allow workers to earn paid sick leave by this scheme that's described in the ballot language. Sick leave could be used to care for oneself or family members. And it also was supposed to provide for flexibility for the size of the employer. That is, small employers with less than 15 employees could limit the accumulation to 40 hours of paid sick leave per year. But larger employers, over 15 employees, could still limit it to 56 hours of paid sick leave per year. So that's a little bit of the background, and those provisions are also in the ballot language itself. The ballot language summary, minimum wage, which is now $12.30, would increase kind of incrementally by $1.25 each year, and it would reach $15 per hour in 2026. After that, the adjustments would be based on the consumer price index. So rather than a static number like the 1230 that we've had for a long time, it would be a changeable figure. All employers would have to provide 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. The Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations would provide the oversight and enforcement of this. And there would be a number of exempted employers, which those of us in Columbia, where there are many of these, might be surprised that exempted would be government entities, political subdivisions, school districts, and educational institutions. So that leaves out quite a few Columbians. The proponents nevertheless say that over 500,000 Missouri workers would get a raise. And because these would be lower wage workers, that would pump money into the economy because they would spend that money. Over 200,000 workers who currently lack paid sick leave would no longer have this difficult choice of going to work sick, sending a sick child to school, or losing pay. And lack of paid sick leave makes workers more likely to go to work while sick. And so paid sick leave becomes then a public health issue. It protects the public health, communities, and coworkers. But the opponents say the cost of a higher minimum wage can't always be passed on to customers. Abuse of paid sick leave reduces productivity and increases costs. And workers who misuse sick leave would disadvantage responsible coworkers who have a heavier workload. And there was no fiscal note attached to this. Questions?
I
This
have a
was a
single
citizen-
question.
Okay.
The language talks of usage and not accumulation. Are you sure there is a limit on accumulation?
I don't know that we have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may depend upon the business, may depend upon the department.
Well, I think that falls under allow the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations to provide oversight and enforcement. Yeah, that they would have to promulgate rules to spell all that out, but yes, the background information talks about how much sick leave can be used by the employee, not how much can be accumulated.
I want to make a point. I heard a piece on the radio.
Closer.
Oh, sorry. That European workers have more time off and they are more productive. And I don't, if anybody else heard that, you probably have more, they are more productive. So this contention that it reduces productivity is, I think, not proven. I'd like to see the data because contrary data exists apparently.
Has the league taken a position on any of these propositions and amendments?
We have.
We have.
Can you share those with us? And because of our venue and our partnership with the library and the fact that we're a nonpartisan organization, we are not sharing that information tonight, but tomorrow there will be a lunch and learn with Rudy Keller. And tomorrow we will be posting our, we only have positions on 3 of them. And that's Prop A, Amendment 7, and Amendment 3. And we will be posting information about our positions tomorrow. But
Yeah, our goal really here is to provide this information, the basic information. A lot of people sometimes will show up at the polling place and discover, oh, my goodness, there's 6 ballot issues, now what? And so this is an opportunity to share that information. And the league is always, the most important thing is that people see the pros and cons and make their own decision about them. Now, the league does take positions because of these are issues that we've studied. And we have that ability to take a position that is not a partisan. It's not in any way partisan. It's just about the issues. But in a setting like this in the library, which is it's totally nonpartisan institution, and we're partnering in this event, that's why we won't announce it at this time, but we will following up.
I think there's only 2 people in this room are really concerned about this, but is this library an educational institute or a government entity that would be excluded?
I think so.
I think so. We're another governmental political
Yeah.
subdivision.
yeah, I think
Yes,
you are
yeah.
political subdivision. So, we have a Zoom question. Is it stated that sick leave only be available to full-time benefit eligible employees, or would it be available to part-time or contract employment? It's my understanding that it would apply to, because it's calculated based on the number of hours worked, that it would apply to part-time as well as full-time employees. However, I would not think that it would extend to contractors because that's a whole different set of laws. Does anybody else have more insight on that?
Would you
Talks about 30
define,
hours.
I should know, I was a social studies
every
teacher
30
for
hours.
31 years, but I don't know what a political subdivision is. And if it's the library, why is the library a political subdivision? I'm just a little confused by that term. And
Do you
I
want to
understand school
explain it,
districts.
Lauren? Or-
I should say, I understand school districts and educational institutions because most of them that I'm aware of already give their teachers sick leave.
Mhm.
And they earn, whatever the school district deems a year, I think this Columbia was 9 days a year, and it accumulates over time. And when you retire, if you don't use all your sick leave, you actually get paid back that amount of money, which is really pretty nice.
Our former director is here and I'm going to hand her the microphone.
I didn't mean to come for this. Easy, it's pretty easy. The libraries are political subdivisions. They're part of the Missouri statutes. And our income is all tax-based. And you vote. It's tax-based. We are not part of the city. We're not part of the county. We're a separate political subdivision, and we have our own statutes in the Missouri statute.
And you have an elected board of trustees.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been gone 6.5 years. Everybody got, even 20-hour people got sick leave when I was 6.5 years ago. It's even better now.
Those exemptions, I believe, are tax supported entities.
I'm
That's-
actually involved in Missouri Workers Jobs with Justice, which initiated this and has cited in this piece of paper for the background. From the time that we enacted the current minimum wage structure that has a set wage and a cost of living adjustment based on the consumer price index, it was made clear that by ballot initiative, citizens are not permitted to usurp the authority of elected governmental entities to set their own terms and conditions of employment. It is not because of what the petition says, it's how the petition process restricts the citizens from amending wage and hour law that is applied to public entities.
Mhm.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you very
yeah,
much for
Tax
that.
supported entities. Yeah.
Any other questions? Nothing more on chat? Gosh, I think we're gonna make it. One of our goals tonight was to make this concise enough that people might actually be lured into watching it on YouTube instead of seeing a 2-hour presentation. But I hope we've been able to answer at least your basic questions. I hope that you will come back tomorrow to listen to Rudy. He will have all kinds of background information that we are not privy to, I'm sure, and it'll be an interesting talk. A couple of other things I wanted to, and be sure to look at our website tomorrow. And you should have all received one of these cards. It has our website on it. It also has a handy dandy reference of all the voting options for early voting and for the central polling locations on voting day. So share this with your friends if you want more of them. There are some on the table along with several other kinds of giveaways out in the hallway. And want to encourage you to spread the word that you can vote early, you can vote if you have a polling place out on the edge of town and you work downtown, you can vote downtown on election day. There are all kinds of options. So thanks to our wonderful county clerk and her office. And I want to say thank you to everyone who presented. Yes?
So tomorrow is Ruby, is that going to be recorded? So.
Yes, the question was whether we'd be recording the lunch and learn if there are people who can't listen to them. And the answer is yes. You can go to our website, which is lwvcbc.org. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's just the little not Facebook, YouTube icon, and you can click on that, get to all of our YouTubes.
And it will be on the library's website.
Oh, and the libraries as well. Yeah.
What is he going to speak about?
He's going to talk about the ballot issues, but he's going to talk about the background. He's an investigative reporter, and he'll talk about how these things came to get on the ballot and
So pretty much
that kind of thing.
everything.
I think probably different perspective than just the facts, ma'am. But we'll see. Thank you to everyone who presented. Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming. And tomorrow is the last day to register to vote. So if you know anyone who needs to do so, tomorrow is it.
And it will be happening here.
We will have people registering from 10 to 12 tomorrow here in the library. So if you know any strays, get them around. Thank you.
Thank you all.